what's the level of integration you guys have? Do you move people around? Do you use centralized scheduling? How much are you running 10 parts or one part or some combination in between?
I would say that it's a very hybrid model in that there's a lot of interaction between what is considered a central process, trying to get the central theme across of patients first, trying to make sure that our goals and visions are where they should be. But then because we're in a sort of some rural areas as well as larger areas, trying to maintain the feel that we're who people know. They know where we are, they know who we are, and they have that comfort level that it's a one-to-one.
This episode of Vital Conversations is produced and distributed by Be Connected, a social media management firm in Northeast Wisconsin.
Hi, my name is Tim Cohen, and welcome to Vital Conversations presented by Focus Solutions. Here we talk to leaders across the healthcare industry about their business and the challenges that they face every day. And I'm thrilled today to have as my guest Bill Duke. Bill is the CFO of Connecticut Skin Health. Bill, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Tim. Thank you.
Hey, to get us started, tell us a little bit about your practice at Connecticut Skin Health, what you guys do, number of locations, employees, providers. Just give us a sense of the size of your enterprise.
It's 10 offices. We've got over 100 employees, over 30 providers. We have MDs and PAs and APRNs, and basically is focused on general dermatology. We also do some cosmetics and some lasers and other things, but very much focused on general derm.
Okay. Is general derm the predominant part of your revenue as opposed to the cash pay on the aesthetics type? Okay, great. So I think I should start this recording over and say Bill Duke, whose title is herder of dogs and cats with 10 offices, 100 employees, 30 providers, a pretty diverse range of services. And that's really kind of what I'd like to talk about today, Bill. Given the size of your enterprise, we love to talk about big strategic issues and negotiating deals with health systems and payers and whatever. But that is a materially complex operation to run and keep all the parts in sync. Let's talk about that a little bit. Tell us, first of all, what are some of the very practical operational challenges that you guys face having that many locations, employees, and providers?
Well, I think the main operational challenge is what faces all practices now is staffing, finding great people that, whether it's MAs to support all our providers or the supporting staff at the front desk, back office. That's a challenge. And then when you have multiple offices, it just exponentially grows. The challenge of making sure that you've got the right people in the right chairs on a daily basis, and then sometimes on a morning and afternoon basis.
Let's break that down into a couple parts. Let's start with the hiring. In talking to practice leaders, particularly since COVID and whatever the reset was in the employer-employee contract and compact, there are challenges, again, all the way up and down the skill ladder, right? Whether you're talking about somebody at the front desk or you're talking about an MD, what are you finding that is different on the recruiting and retention side as you look at your entire ladder of skills from top to bottom?
I think, again, the core of making a practice our size run as the cogs at each location and each position. So I don't think it's, of course, you have to have great providers, right? You've got, I always say that every piece of a practice touches every other piece of the practice.
Okay.
So I don't know that I feel like one segment in and of itself is more critical than the others. If you do a good job of bringing in the providers, if you do a good job of making sure everybody's engaged in the hiring and understanding of
Right.
the type of people you're trying to bring in, then it starts to fit and the pieces join together. It's just that the pieces unfortunately move quite often these days.
Right. So, you could total it up and say, well, that's pretty good sized physician enterprise, but at another point, there are 10 semi-autonomous units, right? So what's the level at which those offices, staff, and providers are independent units? And what's the level of integration you guys have? Do you move people around? Do you use centralized scheduling? How much are you running 10 parts or 1 part or some combination in between?
I would say that it's a very hybrid model in that there's a lot of interaction um, between what is considered a central process, trying to get the central theme across of patients first, trying to make sure that our goals and visions are where they should be. But then because we're in a sort of some rural areas as well as larger areas, trying to maintain the feel that we're who people know. They know where we are, they know who we are, and they have that comfort level that it's a one-to-one.
There are unique challenges staffing in urban areas and rural areas. Are you finding one since you get to see both, are you finding one or the other more challenging right now?
No, I don't think it's one or the other. I
Okay.
think it is trying to make sure that um, you've got enough people involved
Okay.
that you can onboard properly. I think everybody understands how powerful a successful onboard is,
Right.
and finding the right people. You know, we're very fortunate in many regards that there's a lot of professional levels, people who are looking to move up in their careers, and we're able to take advantage of a lot of that. Um, but that also kind of creates the moving pieces that I've mentioned. So it's a constant. It's just not something you can turn your back on.
Right. Onboarding does get short shrift because often if we're trying to hire somebody, we've got a hole, we're anxious to put them out there, and make them productive. What have you found to be one of the most important parts of the onboarding process that is like, we can't skip this. We got to
That
get this
that you recognize you can't skip that. I
right.
mean, I think once you once you realize if you're kind of in a panic mode and you're trying to fill those holes,
Right.
that it's going to be more problematic than if you just slow down and do it right. And everybody realizes that they're a part of that. It's not a one-to-one situation, but going to a practice, a location, making sure everybody at that location understands the importance. And I think that, again, is just a constant message that has to be sent.
Yeah. Let's talk about tools because here you are trying to synchronize patient demand with staffing capacity, provider capacity. There's probably some equipment capacity in there that you're trying to line all up. Um, what tools from a technology and data standpoint do you and your team use to try to get all those things going in the right direction at the right time?
And that's a tough question.
Yeah.
I think, when I think of tools, I'm going to place people in there as well as software, or everything else. There's a lot of things, there's a lot of information that's available, but I don't know that there's a lot of integration with each of those components.
So it's really the humans sitting in the middle that are still pasting it all together because you don't have the integration.
I absolutely. I think
Okay.
it takes the engagement of everybody understanding what you just said. We have the different needs. patients go to one or more offices because of our locations. Sometimes our providers are seeing a patient at both locations or even 3 locations. It just brings in a constant review
Okay.
of who do we have where, and also how to make those things better. I mean, sometimes you can think, well, we've got it set. This person's at this location and that's working. But does that mean that that's the best combination?
Right.
Is there a better combination that also allows another office to do better?
Do you use I'm sure this would not be somebody's official title, but do you use an air traffic controller? Is there a team or a person that is trying to look across all the locations and optimize it? How do you try to land all those planes?
Well, in addition to a couple of the doctors that have a very keen eye on the practice, the owners, and other providers that provide input and such, right? There's 3 or 4 people in different positions, and what they do on an hour-to-hour basis is gathering that information, gathering that knowledge. And then, they're visiting with each other. We're meeting weekly. We're pulling out our data together to see. And it's kind of a mesh of all of that, which is so critical to be consistent with that type of review.
I heard daily, weekly, hourly, kind of lots of time frames in there. You also mentioned data. I'm curious, both at the level of that group of people that are trying to optimize in any given moment, and then from your perspective as the CFO, what are some of the metrics that you guys want to keep an eye on that are telling you how well you're doing with your utilization across all parts of your capacity?
I think the metrics are pretty normal and acceptable types of metrics. We're obviously looking at the appointments, the templates, what percentage of the goals are we meeting?
Okay.
There's the different patient types. There's the recalls, the eligibility verification on the front end.
Right.
I think those are all out there, and I think no shows, cancellations, they're there, but they each tell just a part of the story
Correct.
in my perspective of this, right? And so you have to look to see how can you join all of those different things together
Right.
to paint a little different picture.
Okay.
I don't know that there's a canned report that I've seen that just says, oh, this is
Here's one score that tells you everything you need to
that's
know.
right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You did mention one thing that I want to focus on for just a second. Because it's in the news, it's everywhere right now. And that's around the front end of eligibility verification, pre-authorization, right? We know that the normal human stuff of somebody gets sick, a provider or staff or the patient, those cause reschedules, which kind of gums up this whole machine. But the industry is particularly acutely aware right now of the pain around eligibility verification and pre-auth um, on both the provider side and the payer side. From your chair, what are you guys seeing in that part of the process, say, compared to 5, 10 years ago?
Oh, well, compared to 5, 10 years ago, it's just night and day. Um, there is, of course, right now, you can't have a conversation without the letters AI right in there. Um, but, to me, it boils down to each of the pieces that people are responsible for watching, for monitoring, for managing, and putting those things together. Now, the tasks, I believe, are getting better in that we don't have to remember to do things. A lot of times that's available to us now.
Right.
So something is sent to me that I don't have to try to make sure I remember every day.
Right.
That closes a lot of gaps, I think, in that process. because you receive that and you're able to act on it and manage it.
Right.
And so you're not having to worry about thinking to do it in the first place. I think
Right.
that's one of the biggest changes,
Okay.
is that part.
That human failure to remember is now being supplemented by the
There's
automated.
too many things.
Right.
There's just too many things to try to remember,
Yeah.
to not miss a few, right? Or to get busy. I just think it's easier to have it fed to you and act on it, which is now where a lot of these tools are making it better. I mean, automated eligibility is great, but it still doesn't give you the final answer to every question.
Right. Right. Yeah, when you try to explain how the front end of healthcare works to, say, somebody in manufacturing and distribution, where their supply chain is fully integrated, and if they get a signal, they ship product and it gets paid, and like, what do you mean you guys get approval, but maybe you still don't get paid? And it's like, welcome to our mess. Hey, the final question I want to ask, and I want to sort of take advantage of even though we've had kind of a nuts and bolts day-to-day operation, scheduling, utilization kind of conversation, I want to take advantage of your CFO perspective. And I want to specifically think here about practices that might have grown. Maybe they merged, maybe they opened some new locations, and they're just starting to run into some of the complexity that we've been talking about. And maybe they're not yet committed to putting some resources on how to optimize this, and they're feeling the pain. When you look at it financially, I would assume you would say, if you can get this right, it will really move the needle for you financially. Can you give a little, just maybe not a numeric answer, but some commentary on how powerful it is to your bottom line, the difference between optimizing your capacity versus not?
I'd like to answer that from a historical perspective, because I was in a couple of different models where that happened, where we started out very small and then was able to grow significantly. And in doing so, created multiple locations, hundreds and hundreds of miles, not just tens of miles between others. And in another area, very similar, where it was 20 miles here, 50 miles there. It doesn't matter. It could be 5 miles or 1 mile. Once you start adding those different locations, it just takes on a whole different mindset. And in each of those cases, as long as we were able to make sure that we had good people there at all of the locations, the more we could centralize that information, the better we did.
Got it.
Each and every time.
Yeah.
And it's just being able to manage that growth and the understanding of people's roles and contributions is definitely more powerful. To have that centralized information at your fingertips to be able to use on an individual level if needed.
Interesting.
I hope that makes sense.
Because otherwise, all that information sets off in all those little individual units, and somebody can't even see the opportunity to optimize.
Well, yes. And I mean, if you look at a consolidated statement for 10 locations, it doesn't tell you anything except that.
Right.
And the fun is looking at each and how each one of those impact and affect all the others, and how it develops into a whole. And that's why it's fun to have those problems in multiple locations and providers going different places.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, all those costs, locations and staff and providers are relatively fixed. So every incremental improvement in utilization has really powerful financial results, right?
It is. It's what you said earlier. It's herding cats, but if you can keep track of them, you've got a good story.
Awesome. Well, Bill, thank you for sharing your story today. Again, there's a lot of complexity in an organization your size, and just thank you for the wisdom of fighting that fight every day for all those years. We appreciate you being with us.
Thank you. And Jesus very much.
Awesome.
Thank you, Tim.
Vital Conversations is presented by Focus Solutions. Focus provides integrated IT data and software services to physician practices all across the United States. To hear more stories about physician practice leaders and what they are doing, subscribe to Vital Conversations wherever you get your podcast.